I remember the smell of wet pavement mixing with the cold night rain when Arthur Vasconcelos, a man known for his discipline and emotional distance, noticed something unusual outside his mansion. There, sitting on the sidewalk, completely drenched, was Clara, his maid. She held a torn plastic bag tightly against her chest, her shoulders hunched, her head lowered as if the weight of the entire world were pressing down on her. Arthur had never seen anyone cry like that. Not as if they had lost something, but as if they had lost everything. The sight struck something deep inside him, something he didn't even know was still alive. Without thinking, he left the comfort of his warm home and ran toward her, the rain soaking through his impeccable suit. Water hit his face, his hair, his clothes, but none of it mattered when he heard Clara's broken sobs. She didn't try to explain herself. She didn't try to hide her pain. Her voice wouldn't even come out. It was as if the world around her had become too small to contain so much anguish. Arthur, a man used to solving problems with logic and money, understood immediately. This was a human pain he should never have ignored. When Clara finally lifted her face, Arthur saw something he had never seen in her before. Pure panic. The bag she held contained only wet, partially burned documents, nothing else. No clothes, no personal belongings, no trace of the life she'd built. A chill ran down his spine. He knew he was about to hear something that would change not only her life, but his as well. "My house. It burned down," Clara whispered, as if speaking the words made the trauma real. "I lost everything. I have nowhere to go. My son is with a neighbor. I didn't want to lose my job." And there, under the rain, faced with a pain that wasn't his but suddenly pierced straight through him, Arthur made a decision that would change both their destinies forever. The story you're about to hear is one of pain, loss, rebuilding, and the moment when two completely different worlds collided because of a storm. Arthur, a millionaire used to living at the top, never imagined he would find his own heart in the exact second he saw his maid falling apart in front of him. And Clara, a hard-working woman who always put others first, never imagined she would have to start from zero on a day that seemed completely normal, until it ended in tragedy. But that's what makes this story so powerful. It reminds us that no one is free from pain, from loss, or from unexpected beginnings. Sometimes life feels cruel. Sometimes it destroys everything we built, but sometimes it places the right person in our path at the exact moment we need them the most. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and comment below which city and country you're watching from. It helps us a lot and ensures that you don't miss any emotional story like this one. Now take a deep breath, because when Arthur decided to bring Clara inside the mansion that stormy night, he had no idea he was opening a door not just to offer shelter, but to transform 3 lives, his own, Clara's, and her little boy Gabriel's. From this moment on, the story unfolds in 5 intense, emotional, and deeply human chapters. Let's begin. Clara never imagined that a simple work shift at the market would end with her entire life reduced to ashes. She woke up early, prepared Gabriel's breakfast, and left in her usual rush, trying to balance overdue bills, constant worries, and the fear that something would be missing at home. The sky was cloudy that morning, but she didn't have the luxury to pay attention. The life of someone who struggles does not allow time to check the weather. While she was in the checkout line with only rice, bread, and soap in her basket, her phone rang. It was her neighbor's number. Clara answered with that heavy feeling in the chest that appears when you sense a tragedy coming. On the other end, the voice was trembling, mixed with shouting, people running, and something that sounded like breaking wood. "Clara, your house, and it caught fire!" Those words weren't just spoken. They were thrown like stones, shattering the ground beneath her feet. Clara dropped everything, the bag, the money, her breath. She didn't respond. She couldn't. She just ran, gasping for air, her legs weak, feeling as if she would never arrive in time. At every corner, she imagined Gabriel trapped inside. His face was the only thing she could see. The fear of losing him burned her chest like blades. When she finally turned onto her street, she saw what was left of her little home. Smoke, dying flames, and neighbors trying to help. The kitchen, where she kept the documents, was completely charred. Gabriel's room, destroyed. When she found her son already safe in the neighbor's house, Clara collapsed to her knees. He was crying, scared, holding a half-burned teddy bear. She held him so tightly it was as if she were trying to prevent the world from taking him away too. But she knew the world had already taken everything else. Civil defense arrived soon after, but there was nothing to be done. The walls were black, hollow, ready to collapse. The house she had built with years of sacrifice, working as a cleaner, laundress, and finally as a maid, no longer existed. The official handed her a damp paper with notes and instructions to find temporary shelter. Clara walked aimlessly afterward, holding only a bag with partially burned documents, one change of clothes for Gabriel, and the singed teddy bear. The sky opened, releasing a heavy rain, but she didn't feel cold. She was numb. The world was a gray blur. The only certainty she had was that she couldn't miss work. If she lost her job, she would be completely lost. That was how she arrived at Arthur's mansion, soaked, trembling, eyes swollen from crying, heart shattered. She didn't know how to explain. She didn't know where to begin. She only knew she needed to walk inside, breathe, and stay alive, even if on autopilot. But when she stopped in front of the gate, something inside her broke. The strength that had held her up for years simply vanished. Clara couldn't take another step. She stood there, frozen, clutching the bag as if it were her last piece of life. That was when Arthur saw her from the window. And in that moment, with the rain mixing with her tears, two completely different worlds collided. Not by choice, but by fate. Arthur stood for a few seconds at the window, unable to believe what he was seeing. The image of Clara, normally so discreet, so composed, now completely shattered under the rain, made something inside him tremble. He, who always prided himself on being rational and distant, felt an urgency that made no sense for a man used to solving everything with cold logic. When he opened the door and ran toward her, the first thing he noticed was how her body trembled. Clara seemed unaware of the icy water running down her clothes, but her face was devastated. Arthur tried to ask what had happened, but she only shook her head, gripping the bag as if it were a piece of her life. In that single moment, he understood something terrible had happened, and she needed someone. "Clara, please come inside." His voice came out firm, yet surprisingly gentle. She tried to answer, but the sob stuck in her throat wouldn't allow it. Desperation was written in her eyes, and Arthur realized she was fighting not to collapse right there in front of her employer. When she finally managed to force out a few words, the truth hit Arthur like a blow. "My house, it caught fire. I lost everything." He felt the air escape his chest for a moment. He hadn't expected something that big. Clara wasn't the type to exaggerate. She wasn't the type to complain. If she was saying that, she was truly destroyed. Arthur guided her inside the mansion carefully, as if carrying something fragile. Her soaked clothes dripped onto the shiny marble floor, but he didn't care. He turned on the heater, brought towels, and asked her to sit. Clara hesitated, always worried about not being a bother. But Arthur insisted. When she finally explained, between sobs, how everything had happened, the neighbor's call, the flames, the panic about Gabriel, Arthur felt something unfamiliar. It wasn't pity. It was indignation. How could someone so strong, so hard-working, so dedicated carry that much pain alone? And how, with all his money and resources, had he never noticed she lived at the edge of collapse? Clara clutched the wet bag so tightly that her fingers were turning white. She repeated under her breath, "I can't lose my job. I can't. My son depends on it." Arthur felt small. While he lived surrounded by luxury, Clara fought every day just to guarantee a roof and a meal. "Clara," he said slowly, choosing every word carefully, "you're not going to lose anything. Not your job, not your dignity, not your future. I'm here. You're not alone." The sentence broke her. Clara finally collapsed completely, crying in his arms. Arthur, who always avoided emotional contact, stayed there, firm, supporting a pain that wasn't his, but that he silently vowed to share from that moment on. After a few minutes, when she could breathe again, Arthur made a decision that would change everything from that night forward. "I'm going to get your son right now. You both will stay here until everything is resolved. And about your house, we will rebuild it. From scratch." Clara widened her eyes, unable to believe it. "That's not possible, sir." "It is, because I want to, and because you deserve it." Clara cried again, but this time there was something new in her tears. Hope. And Arthur realized that on that stormy night, he wasn't just offering shelter. He was beginning a journey that would change his own life as well. The night had been long for Clara. Even though she was exhausted, she barely slept in the luxurious guest room where Arthur had placed her. It wasn't the softness of the mattress or the absolute silence of the mansion. It was the emptiness inside her. The image of her burning house wouldn't leave her mind, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flames reflected on the walls. But beside her, Gabriel slept peacefully, safe, and that was what mattered. Arthur didn't sleep well either. He walked through the mansion for hours, through the library, the dining room, the office, places that always seemed perfect. But that morning, something made him see everything differently. For the first time, he noticed the loneliness that lived inside those enormous spaces. How many people worked for him? 5, 6, and how many did he truly know? None. Not even Clara, who had been under his roof for 3 years. At dawn, Arthur called his engineer friend, Marcelo, explaining the situation. Marcelo listened in silence and then said, "Arthur, if you want to rebuild her house, we'll do it. But be prepared. This isn't just construction, it's a new beginning." Arthur exhaled. He knew that. And for the first time, he didn't back away from something involving feelings. When Clara walked into the living room to thank him for the hospitality, still embarrassed, Arthur was waiting with freshly brewed coffee and a determined expression. "Today, we're going to your property," he said. "I want you to see that you haven't lost everything. We're going to start again." Clara tried to protest, but Arthur raised his hand. "Don't argue. Accept it. I need to do this." She didn't understand what that last sentence meant, but something in his eyes showed sincerity. The drive to the property was silent. Gabriel, in the back seat, hugged his singed teddy bear like a treasure. Clara clasped her hands tightly, terrified of what she would see. Arthur, driving, glanced at her through the rearview mirror, feeling a concern he'd never imagined having for someone outside his family. And ironically, he hadn't had family close in years. When they arrived, Clara felt her stomach twist. The scene was even worse in daylight. The roof had collapsed. The kitchen was warped. The walls, black, fragile, looked like burned bones. She covered her mouth, trying to hold back her tears. Arthur approached quietly, offering only his presence. Sometimes presence is worth more than words. Marcelo arrived shortly after, assessing the property calmly. "This will be a lot of work," he said. "But it's possible. The structure is gone. We'll have to build everything from scratch." Clara's chest tightened. "I can't afford this." Marcelo looked at Arthur. "She won't pay for anything," Arthur replied immediately. Clara froze. "Arthur, that's too much." "Clara," he said softly, "there are things we do because they're the right thing to do, and you deserve that chance." "Gabriel deserves that chance." The engineer began taking measurements, making notes, and explaining the process of reconstruction. Clara listened, but her mind felt distant. How could this be happening? Why was a man so distant moving heaven and earth for her? Gabriel wandered through the charred remains, kicking little stones, until he stopped in front of what used to be his bedroom. "Mom, is our house coming back?" Clara swallowed her tears. "Yes, sweetheart. It's coming back even prettier than before." Arthur watched the scene with a strange weight in his chest, a good one. It was as if helping Clara also helped him, as if rebuilding that house rebuilt something inside him too. For too long he'd hidden behind work, money, and huge walls. But now, Now he wanted to do something real. As they left the property, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not certainty, not security, but a small, timid flame that was still alive. And walking beside Arthur and Gabriel, with the wind carrying away the smell of ashes, she understood that maybe that tragedy was also the beginning of something unexpectedly good. The following days were a mix of chaos, rebuilding, and discoveries. Clara tried in every possible way not to disturb the mansion's routine. She woke up early, helped wherever she could, and avoided taking up space. But even so, Arthur noticed she walked as if stepping on broken glass, afraid of getting in the way, and that bothered him deeply. He wanted her to feel comfortable, but he soon realized Clara was the kind of woman who didn't know how to rest, not when she felt she was living under someone else's roof. Gabriel, on the other hand, adapted quickly. He ran through the hallways, amazed by everything. The mansion, which had always seemed too big and too silent, started filling with life thanks to the boy's laughter. Arthur, who had always disliked noise, found that somehow that sound calmed him. Sometimes he watched the boy play and felt a strange nostalgia, as if he had lost something long ago that he couldn't even remember anymore. Clara helped in the kitchen, washed dishes, organized the guest rooms, even though Arthur insisted she didn't have to work during that period. "Clara, you're here as a guest, not as an employee." She always responded with the same timid smile. "I can't stay here doing nothing, Mr. Arthur. Please let me help." The truth was, for her, working was the only way to keep her mind away from the tragedy. One day, while Clara was hanging clothes she had washed for Gabriel, Arthur appeared in the yard, watching her silently. "Marcelo sent me the new plans for your house," he said. "Do you want to see them?" Surprised, Clara dried her hands on her apron and approached him. Arthur opened his tablet and showed her a modern, simple project, but much bigger than what she had before. 2 bedrooms, an open living room and kitchen, a spacious bathroom, natural ventilation. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Arthur, I never dreamed of something like this." "Then start dreaming," he replied. "Life still has good things to give you." On the days they didn't visit the construction site, Arthur took Clara and Gabriel to the market, to the park, or on small outings to distract them. He also offered to pay for Gabriel's new school until the house was ready. Clara protested, of course, but Arthur was firm. "You've suffered enough. Now let someone help you." And she finally accepted. It was the first time in years that someone did something for her without expecting anything in return. But despite all the help and attention, Clara carried a deep insecurity. One night, while Arthur worked in his office, she knocked on the door with an anguished expression. "I don't want to bother, but I need to ask something." Arthur removed his glasses immediately. "Tell me, when the house is ready, will I still have my job?" Arthur froze. "Clara, why would you think you'd lose it?" "Because," she swallowed hard, "I'm living here. People might talk. They might think I'm taking advantage. I don't want them to think badly of you." Arthur stood up and approached her. "I don't care what people think, but I care about you. And yes, Clara, your job is yours, as long as you want it." Relief washed over her so intensely her legs almost gave in. "Thank you. Thank you for everything." He touched her shoulder gently. "I should have been a better employer from the beginning. I should have noticed you needed help." Clara lifted her face, surprised. "You've always been fair." "But I wasn't human," he replied. "Now, I'm trying to be." As weeks passed, visits to the construction site became routine. Clara watched every brick being placed, every wall rising, while Gabriel ran excitedly through what would be his new room. Arthur, even with his busy schedule, always found time to be there. He began to like that ritual. It was as if, every time a wall was built, something inside him was rebuilt as well. Conversations between him and Clara began to feel lighter. They talked about Gabriel, about childhoods, about music, about food. Arthur discovered Clara sang beautifully, though she had stopped singing after the fire. "You should sing again," he said. "Your voice, it brings peace to the house." Clara laughed shyly. "I only sing so Gabriel can sleep." "Then start singing for yourself too." And she did. When the structure of the new house was finally complete, Clara couldn't hold back her tears. Standing beside Arthur, she whispered, "I thought God had closed all the doors, but he opened a huge window." Arthur took a deep breath, feeling something new grow inside his chest, something he didn't yet know how to name. Life was changing, and neither of them could imagine what would come next. As the weeks passed, something subtle began to change in the mansion's routine. Arthur, who used to spend long hours locked in his office, now found himself looking for excuses to be in the same space as Clara and Gabriel. Sometimes it was a simple pretext. "Do you need help with that?" Other times he just appeared without explanation, watching them with a small smile he didn't even notice he had. Their presence seemed to fill spaces he hadn't known were empty. Clara felt the change too, though she tried hard to ignore it. She knew her place in the world, knew the distance between their lives, their realities, and she would never dare cross that invisible line between employer and employee. But at the same time, she couldn't help the warmth she felt when Arthur came near, nor the unexpected comfort he brought with just a look. It was confusing. It was new. And it was dangerous. One Saturday morning, Arthur decided to take them to the construction site to see the progress. The house already had walls, windows, and almost the whole roof. Gabriel ran everywhere, celebrating each detail as if it were a holiday. Clara looked at everything with tears threatening to fall, and Arthur, as always, stayed by her side, silent but present. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's turning out the way you deserve," he replied without thinking. Clara lowered her gaze, blushing. There were feelings there she never imagined he could have. After the visit, Arthur stopped at a small bakery in town. He ordered coffee, fresh bread, and cheese pastries for Gabriel. Clara tried to refuse, but he insisted, "Today is my day to treat you." Gabriel laughed, and Clara smiled with real lightness for the first time in months. In that simple bakery, dressed in modest clothes, Arthur looked human. Not the unreachable millionaire, but a man who enjoyed seeing them happy. And Clara realized she respected that man, not just worked for him. On the way back home, a light rain began to fall. Gabriel fell asleep in the back seat, and the car grew quiet. Clara watched the window and murmured, "Thank you for everything you're doing." "I don't have words." Arthur turned his face toward her. "I don't want your thanks. I want you to live. I want to see you smile again." Clara closed her eyes for a brief moment. Her heart beat so fast it almost hurt. "It's been a long time since anyone said that to me." "Then let me be the first of many," Arthur replied. That night, Gabriel fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day. Clara was in the kitchen preparing tea when Arthur walked in. He stopped at the door, watching her for a few seconds. "You look tired," he said. "I am, but it's a good kind of tired." He moved closer. "You know, I admire your strength, Clara. You faced a tragedy and you're still standing. You're still a mother, still smiling for Gabriel. That's admirable." Clara lowered her gaze. "Sometimes I feel like I'm going to collapse." "Then let me hold you before you fall," he said without breaking eye contact. The air between them grew heavy. Clara felt her heart race, and Arthur took one more step closer. For a second, she thought he would touch her. But Arthur inhaled deeply and stepped back. "Forgive me," he murmured. "I don't want to put you in a difficult position." Clara shook her head. "You don't need to apologize." But both of them knew something had shifted. The following days were filled with a tense silence, not uncomfortable but expectant. Clara avoided being alone with Arthur, afraid her heart would betray her reason. Arthur tried to keep his distance, but it was impossible not to draw near when he saw Clara helping Gabriel with homework or softly singing as she washed dishes. Her presence illuminated parts of the house and his life that had been dark for years. When the house reached 80% completion, Marcelo called a meeting to discuss final details. Clara felt both excited and nervous. Every painted wall, every placed tile made her feel like her life was truly being rebuilt. And Arthur, watching her happiness, realized something very clear. Her joy mattered to him. On the way back from the meeting, Arthur understood something frightening and undeniable. He didn't want this story to end when the house was ready. He wanted to remain close to her, close to both of them, but he knew he had to move with caution, respect, and honesty, because Clara deserved nothing less. And for the first time in many years, Arthur felt fear. Fear of losing something he hadn't even had yet. The big day finally arrived. The last roof tiles had been placed, the paint was fresh, and the house smelled new. A scent Clara never imagined she would experience again after the tragedy. Walking with Arthur and Gabriel, she approached the new front door slowly. Each step carried the weight of everything she had lost and the promise of something completely different. Gabriel ran ahead, excited, as if entering an enchanted castle. "Ready?" Arthur asked, his hand on the doorknob. Clara took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "I don't think I'll ever be completely ready," she admitted. "Then we'll go together," he said. And for the first time, those words didn't sound like simple kindness. They sounded like a promise. When the door opened, Clara held her breath. The house was beautiful, simple, but beautiful. Every wall, every tile, every detail seemed to have been placed with care, with intention. Gabriel's room had a wall decorated with stars and planets. Clara's room had a large window that let the light pour in. The kitchen was spotless. Everything was better than she had ever dreamed. Arthur watched her in silence, paying attention to the glow in her eyes. Clara walked to the center of the living room and began to cry. Not from sadness, from gratitude. "I don't deserve all this," she murmured. Arthur stepped closer. "Clara, you deserve much more than you think. You just forgot that because of how hard your life has been." She looked up, surprised. "You changed my life," she whispered. "And you changed mine too," Arthur replied, letting the truth escape for the first time. The symbolic ceremony of handing over the house meant more to Clara than any official document. Marcelo gave her the keys with a wide smile, proud of the result. "Take good care of this home," he said. Clara took the keys like someone accepting a treasure. "I will. With all my soul," Gabriel celebrated, running through the yard and laughing the way he hadn't in months. Arthur watched the scene with a tightness in his chest. The good kind. When everyone left and only Arthur and Clara remained in the bright living room, the house seemed to embrace them with that scent of fresh paint and hope. Clara ran her hand along the newly painted wall. "I wish I could repay you for all of this, but I don't know how." Arthur smiled softly. "I don't want anything in return." She looked at him. "I want to repay you somehow. You saved my life. You saved my son's life." Arthur took a deep breath. The truth had been stuck in his throat for weeks. "Clara, I didn't do this just to help. I did it because—" He hesitated, feeling his heart race. "Because you showed me a side of myself I forgot existed." She frowned gently. "What side? The human one? The one that feels, that cares, that needs more than work, money, and cold walls?" Clara stayed silent. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Arthur replied. "I just want you to know that you and Gabriel changed my life." A shiver ran down Clara's spine. No man had ever spoken to her like that. No man had ever looked at her with such honesty. But even so, fear rose inside her. "I'm scared, Arthur. Scared of losing my job. Scared of people talking. Scared this is all an illusion." He stepped closer. "I would never do anything that would put you or your son at risk. And—" he swallowed. "I would never do anything you didn't want." Clara felt her eyes fill with tears. The silence between them was full of unspoken feelings. Arthur lifted his hand and gently touched her arm. Clara closed her eyes. It wasn't just gratitude. It was affection. Connection. The beginning of something she didn't know if she was ready for. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel wrong. "Arthur," she whispered. He pulled his hand back, respecting her boundary. "You don't have to decide anything now. I just want you to know I'm here, not as your boss, as someone who cares." And she believed him. By the end of the afternoon, Clara and Gabriel stayed in their new house. Arthur said goodbye with a small but meaningful smile. Clara stood in the doorway, watching him get into his car. The wind brushed her face, and she understood she wasn't just returning home. She was beginning a completely new life. And as she held Gabriel's hand, she felt a certainty growing inside. The storm that destroyed her home had brought the man who would change her destiny forever. When Arthur left that afternoon, Clara remained standing in the center of her new house, looking at the freshly painted walls. She stayed there for a few minutes, feeling the breeze coming through the window touch her face like an embrace from destiny. For the first time since the tragedy, she didn't feel afraid of tomorrow. She didn't feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. She felt relief. She felt gratitude. She had survived the impossible. And although she didn't have all the answers, she had one certainty. She was standing. She was still standing. The rest would come later. As the weeks passed, Clara and Gabriel arranged their home little by little, filling every corner with life, laughter, and new memories. And while she organized the simple furniture, Clara thought about Arthur, about the way he looked at her, the humanity hidden behind his firm posture, about how he had seen her pain when no one else did. But she understood something deep. Arthur had offered his hand, yes, but she was the one who rebuilt her life. And so Clara understood that the storm that destroyed her house did not destroy her faith. She discovered that the greatest wealth is not money, but the strength to rise again when everything seems lost. That was her true rebirth.